should tell us when we're starting. Oh, it's starting. Okay. It's actually going. It should tell us though, but it
Yes,
does.
it does. hmm
Hey JJ,
Hi, Chris. How are you?
it's actually Dr. Voth, but I'm doing fine.
I knew you
Uh,
win. I knew you win. So you're just Chris.
we you're actually Dr. JJ, but you don't put that on the screen, and you don't want people to. You just assume people know, or
I like to break
don't
down
think
any.
yours is legit like mine is.
Yeah, mine, mine is legit. It took me 9 years, and so it is legit.
Less than like a medical doctor. That's crazy.
Is it?
Yeah, I
Is it?
think I think you took longer than if you had to do surgery. I always say that my students would never they never call me Dr. Voth. It was always Dr. Voth. Like it was, oh, hey, Mr. Voth. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Voth. So I never heard it like said in any way that
Normal.
sounded like it was. So I'm not used to anyone calling me that with any level of respect. So I get that.
People call it to me, call me that in a professional setting, but it's still very weird to hear. It's still very weird to hear.
I don't think it's weird to hear, but I do understand when people. So yours is a PhD. Do you want to say what's in?
Communication.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said. What was it? Easy joke. But mine is actually an EDD, not ED, that's something else, but EDD.
hmm
And so there's a little weird thing when someone says, "Oh, you got your PhD," and I think, do I correct them? Because it doesn't matter. But someone with a PhD, it really matters. So
Yeah,
if if they hear it, I'm sure under the breath of like, well, not actually,
not a real one. Not a real
yeah,
doctor.
yeah. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
really. It's like it's one step above an honorary one you would get for being in a band that got really popular.
Uh-huh.
But I did have to do 4 years, and I did a dissertation just to be clarify all that. Hey, so the reason I'm having you on here is a couple of reasons. One, I think you still owe me money from back in the day.
Absolutely.
Secondly, or maybe one B, I thought, you know what? There's not enough podcasts out there. You know what? Why not 2 billion in one? How about 2 billion in one? So I had this idea for a long time to do a podcast, not the podcast part, but this specific idea. And I think I've talked to you about it. I don't remember. But
I
this
don't either.
idea was to have a podcast where I would talk about education and comedy since I have a foot in both fields. And I haven't really seen that. I've seen some variations, but not exactly this. And initially, my idea was to have comedians on and have them on with their favorite teacher from high school. But you know what I figured out is that most of the comedians I know, their favorite teacher from high school is passed away. So, so that it made it very. I thought, this is going to be pretty one-sided if we're going to just have. Uh, so now it's just sort of
Scheduling is going to be really hard for
very
that.
difficult, very difficult. And so then, do you have their kids on to go? Well, I think if they were here, they would say this. So I don't know if that's the right way to go either. So it's just going to be education and comedy together.
Classic combination that everybody always thinks about.
Yeah. Some say edutainment. I mean, I don't, but some
Please
might.
don't. Please don't.
Oh, okay.
Please don't.
Uh, come education. How about that?
There it is.
No.
There it is. Much better.
So then I'm thinking, what's going to be the name of it? That's what you're probably thinking. What's going to be the name of it?
I've been ever since you asked me to be on. I've been wondering.
Yeah. And what'd you come up with?
Um,
Lester. That's not. That's
come
a good
education.
name, but it's not. It's not the name of this.
Come education. That's what
Come
I.
education.
Yeah, that's what I came up
That's a
with.
good one. It's just
Off
going
the
to
top
be
of my head.
called Teacher Comedian Podcast.
Oh, okay.
And
So
the teacher
on
is
the note.
first to imply that education comes before comedy. Now, I always say that when when I'm interviewing for teaching jobs, I say, "Oh, I'm a teacher and a comedian, not a comedian and a teacher." I want to be clear about that. The students come first. Not every day, but on most days. Uh, Sometimes you got to take a sub day to get that $100 from doing a bar gig. Am I right, guys? I don't know why I'm doing this because I'm right into the mic, but yeah. So look, I even have. Wait, it's backwards.
Oh wow, you have merch
I already have
already.
merch. This is the logo, and it actually will. It won't actually be this. It'll be a picture of this because I only have one of these. So
So
you
people
can,
can buy a picture of that. That's your merch.
the guests on the show are gonna get a picture of the mug.
Oh,
Like a JPEG, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what we, maybe JPEG 2000. I always see those. I'm not even sure what that one is. I think it's probably seems to. Anyway, that's the idea. So, I mean, I'm just gonna wait for applause because I'm sure anybody that's watching this and seeing this is going, this is groundbreaking.
this is
A
riveting.
podcast that involves comedians. First of all, let me sit down for that. Then secondly, with education, okay, so make it more boring than like a regular. But there are lots of topics that actually overlap. And I know there's some amazing teachers out there who are doing some cool stuff. And particularly in the era we're at, where we just came out of COVID lockdown stuff over the last few years, where people had to learn how to reteach in a different way. And comedians, many of them are, I don't know if they were good students or not, kind of unusual students. So they might, yeah, they might have something to contribute to that, those
I love
conversations.
it. I'm very excited about it. When you really did, I do remember when you first started talking about this, and
1997.
97. It was a good year. It was a good year. We could still meet.
We didn't even
people.
there weren't even podcasts yet, but I was like, you know what I'm thinking? Just talk.
Just
And
talk.
have
It's like
people.
radio, but not.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It's just like radio.
But when you brought it up, I really love the idea because I do think there's a lot of overlap, and I use a lot of techniques that I used in comedy and in improv in teaching, and I think anybody who can stand up in front of a class of kids and keep them connected and entertained, in particular for what sometimes is 6 hours a day, I think has the ability to control a room and move people, and I think that's something that's shared with comedy for sure. But there isn't a lot out there. You are starting to see a few more like teachers try to become comedians now, which is really interesting.
Yes. I'm very angry about that. I mean,
You
I'm
regret
supportive.
that.
I'm supportive in the way I'm supposed to be outwardly, but on the inside, as usual, I'm bitter and angry.
Mhm.
Um, I should introduce you. Well, they'd have to introduce me too because no one knows who I am. But
Mhm.
as a guest, so I am Chris Voth, and I've done stand up for about 25 years, and professionally to some degree. Um, and then I started teaching. I've taught 13 years. Taught full time for 13 years. So together, but I was a comedian first, and then a teacher, and not a way most people assume. Most people assume I was teaching and then started doing stand up, but that's what some of those tours and some of those groups are now. And along the way, I was in an improv group with you that we don't
Yes.
have to. Well, we'll discuss a little bit.
Yeah.
And this is JJ Peterson, who also has a doctorate. We're both doctors. So, I mean, if anyone's listening to this and there's an emergency, we pre-recorded this, so we can't help you. But even if we weren't pre-recording this, we still couldn't help you. So,
Very, very little help. Very little help. And oddly
I,
enough, I was a comedian before I was a teacher as well.
wow. Oh, yeah. That's true. So we were in an improv group together in, I think, '04 to '06 or somewhere around there, '05, something like that. And so we did improv. We've traveled around, and I was not good at improv. I mean, I, I'm a genius and I'm brilliant and all that. We don't have to argue that part. That's a
Nobody
given.
does.
Set that aside.
Nobody. Yeah.
But in terms of acting on stage, and when you go from stand up to improv, it's not. We don't love it. We don't love it.
You had to do well at acting that you enjoyed being on stage in that
Yeah. The
environment.
acting I did was I was enjoying being part of an improv group. That was the acting, and it was brilliant. Uh, I didn't want to be a character, and and if you saw my film, you will notice that I also am not really a character in that either. I'm exactly the same person in every scene. And even if there's a suggestion, okay, you're a fish who's riding a bike, I'm like, all right, hey everybody, I'm a fish, I'm riding a bike. I still sound exactly the same. I still talk the same.
You did.
There was no
And
difference.
usually hung your head while doing it. You kind of put your head down
Yeah.
and maybe put your hand over your eyes a little bit while you were being a fish on a bicycle.
Which time do you think I was the worst? because we could pick out a lot when that was really good. But what was the one that made everyone angry? And I
The
know
one,
you'll be able to come up with this one. I think you will. Probably pretty
well,
close.
there's oddly enough, there's too many to choose from.
Okay, well,
But the time, one of the times I remember is that we were doing a benefit for an adoption group where they helped families adopt handicapped kids from
this is already
Ukraine.
funny. This is already
Yes.
funny.
And it was supposed to be this huge show. There was room for about 2,000 people in this auditorium, and they had sold less than 200 tickets. And we had hired a video crew to come in
Oh
and
yeah, oh
film.
that one, yeah.
It was going to be a huge show. We were going to get great footage from it, and there was no laughter. And the person got up on stage to introduce us, and before she introduced us, she mentioned how tonight was dedicated to Emily, who had
Oh,
died just a few weeks earlier. And Emily had helped all of these children be adopted with the family. So everybody's very close. And she stands on stage and she says, are her parents here tonight? No, they're still, it's too hard. Okay, could we have a moment of silence before we, and you and I were sitting in the back, just, I can feel your anxiety building right now as I'm telling you, because we were
well,
going, what in the world? And then she literally threw tears. There was a moment of silence
yeah.
before we're supposed to go on stage for a comedy show. And tears start coming down her eyes, and she goes, "Welcome to the stage, 3, 2, 1, improv." And then we come running out. Hey, everybody!
High energy, high energy. Uh,
Place where people work, huh? Who
give
got?
us some. Let's give some places where people would gather together. Well, funeral, that's one, but let's think of another one. Let's think of another one.
And
Um,
you were not really having that show. You were not really having that show, and they were all there
and
to
recorded,
support.
and recorded.
And it was recorded, and I think we got maybe 30 seconds
It was
of good
terrible.
footage, and most of that was me on the ground acting like a seal, and that was about as far as we
Oh,
got.
I kind of remember that part. Yeah, I believe that she said the term I remember her saying was, "They're not here. Oh, they're still grieving."
Yes, they're still grieving. Yes.
But anyway, we have some comedians, so let's bring them up. And yes, that that's usually the clue when you hear grieving, you know. Well, I think our intro is coming up after that.
Yes.
I was speaking of one that we did a party quirks, and I was a NASCAR driver, and
Yes. Yeah.
and you and the other person who was in the group were so angry at me that I was.
Well,
By
the
the way, one
suggestion,
of the
it
few
was,
times I really was acting.
you were trying to get us to guess that you were
Yeah,
a NASCAR driver,
yeah.
and all you did was walk around in a circle. You just
Going
walked
left,
around,
but only turning
and
left.
no other clues, no other suggestions, no other anything. Like not even talking about NASCAR. All you did was just walk in a circle for about 3 to 5 minutes,
It seemed way
and we just
longer.
kept trying to get you to guess. We kept trying to guess what you were doing, and you wouldn't give us anything else. You just kept walking in the
I was a
circle.
NASCAR driver. I don't know a lot of words, so that's just I just know how to drive.
Yeah,
And the fumes were getting to me, so I was really, in it. Yeah, it was.
it's weird. We didn't last. It's weird that like
Yeah,
we're not
it's
still doing
crazy.
it.
It's crazy, but I'm so glad that that was just before cameras were ubiquitous on phones. That there's not footage of
Yes.
all that because that would have been horrific for me to have that stuff out there. You wouldn't mind because you don't mind. Just you go, oh, that's just fun stuff. I would have hated every moment that I would see it out there. I would every time it would come up. Still a couple shows, some clips of some shows that there's one I don't want people to look for it, so I don't really want to give too much of it. But it was for a benefit for something not like comedy. And we had to write specific jokes for it, and it was the first clip that came up for a long time on Google. And I hope people don't think these are the jokes I do normally, but it's like the first one. It was about wind farms. So now it's too late. Now you're gonna find that. So I did 5 minutes of jokes on wind farms, and I thought I hope people don't think that's my thing.
It
But
was topical. It was.
yeah, it was very topical, very good, and they weren't terrible jokes. They just weren't very good jokes. Anyway, so that's how we became friends, and we traveled together and quite a bit. and hung out a lot, and we learned each other's sleep patterns and
Hmm.
eating habits, which is even
Yes.
stranger. Both involve tubes, actually, come to think of it. And you know what I'm talking about. You don't have to act like you don't. And then we went our separate ways, and then I started teaching after that. And you, will you explain what you do? Because it is teaching. It is teaching, just not like classroom teaching. So, how would you describe what you do?
Well, after we were together, I did go into the classroom. I was a
Oh, that's right.
professor for a while. Yeah, so I was a professor. I taught
I also was an
communication
adjunct professor. If you guys are wondering, just to,
for keeping score,
yeah.
and then from there, I ended up moving into marketing. Actually, I help companies create good stories. I help them clarify their message through like a story framework. So I teach companies how to create marketing.
Wow, that was
Riveting.
just so boring. And that just the one sentence you said, I almost fell asleep. That was incredible. But you're good at it. You're good at it.
It
uh,
is. It is
you
fun.
and yet you've been my friend for 20 years and not helped me clarify my story to
Not at
any
all.
degree.
You do
So
not have a clear one.
no,
There's no clear story here.
there's people always say they start asking me and they go, "Oh, but then you do that, but then you also do that," and then yeah, and then oh yeah, and I also do that, and like
Yeah.
what's going on with it? What all this stuff you're doing? And I don't know. I'm just doing stuff to try to kill time.
Yeah. It would make a horrible movie.
It would make a horrible. But speaking of great movies, uh, we'll talk about some other time. I did a movie, guys. You guys will see it. It'll probably be at a film festival near you if it's a festival where hardly anyone applies. And there's a category. So I did this all myself, and the category I just got just recently was accepted into a first film festival. Oh, okay. Just
Hold
saw
for
waiting for
applause.
applause and people kind of going crazy. Um, and the category is no budget. So
And you even had a budget, but they're like, clearly this
I know.
movie
So that's
has
what.
zero
So
budget.
I've looked at a couple of these, and like the low budget was 250,000 or less, and then the micro budget was 100,000 or less, and then 25,000 or less was called no budget, and that's what I was in, and and I did mine for about 25,000, and it's amazing how many times people go, "That's like nothing," and which is true. Unless it all came out of your savings account, then it feels like something. That's a chunk of change that I could have used for, I don't know, golf or something. But yeah. So anyway, that's that. I'm sure by the time people see this, they'll have already seen the movie or
Yeah.
read about it, or it's a pretty big deal.
It's making the
Um,
circuit.
yeah. So you were teaching, so you're doing that sort of teaching. Okay, so what are so as I'm trying to now develop this idea for this podcast, what I'm hoping to
Yeah.
do is do a few topics. And what are you thinking if you're thinking about ways that these connect? Now, I'll just say like the ones that people usually comment to me, which is, oh, your students must love you because you're so funny. I mean, there's some, the premise there you may have trouble with that I'm so funny, but there is this idea that it's similar and that if you're funny, that you can be a good teacher. I do think that helps, but how far do you think that goes for like what you do as far as humor?
I think it always helps, but I don't think you have to be funny in order to be a good teacher. In fact, when you try to be funny, I find for myself, like the first day of class when I'm trying too hard, it goes so bad. It just goes so bad because I try so hard to be funny and make them like me right off the bat, and it never goes well. And when I can actually just be confident and not even, I mean, I can throw in a few jokes here and there, but if I'm just trying to just communicate clearly and well, then it actually goes so much better than when I
What do
try
you
to be
plan
funny.
out those first day jokes? Do you have them like in a slide or something?
Well, because I speak so much, I travel all the time and speak, I do have a pretty set group of
Oh,
jokes that I say
yeah.
that
Is it something like a
get
good
a few
evening?
giggles. Get a
Oh.
few giggles. They're not belly laughter, but you get a few giggles here and there. And most of them now when because I teach at Vanderbilt now, and
Oh,
when
name
I
dropping.
with some of the jokes, oh, is that? Oh, did I
Oh,
not mention
yeah, yeah. I
that?
mean, whatever. Well,
Yeah,
and maybe you won't be teaching there by the time we air this, but
probably not. Um, but when I that I want to impress these very smart kids who are at this
Mhm.
prestigious school, and some of my jokes are more in the lines like I bring up ET, or I'll bring up um, Babysitter's Club or something like that, a movie from my college years that they've never seen or even heard of, and
Yeah.
those jokes do not go over well
One
either.
of the
So I've had
painful
to.
things is one of the painful things is when they say they're going to watch classic movies, and you do not want to follow up that question or that comment with a question like, "Oh, what kind of classic movie?" And they're going to rattle off stuff that's come out long after you were out of high school. It's painful. So I don't ever ask when they say, "Oh, we're just hanging out watching classic movies." Oh, classics, huh?
And the thing, as you're talking about this, just asking about the carryover between the two, comedy is designed to be entertaining, right? And I think education is designed to ultimately, I think, uh, influence. And I don't mean like bring in your own perspective and like make people think exactly the way you think, but education is designed to kind of influence and cause people to think and ultimately move to action, whereas comedy is a little bit more straightforward entertainment. Now there are some people I think who make their comedy about influence and education as well, and that there is definitely crossover there. But I think when you confuse the two, if you think you're going to walk in and be a teacher and be entertaining, then you're actually going to miss the mark. But if you go in and entertainment is a part of it, a byproduct, then it all works together
Mm.
well.
The first part, what you were discussing, that's what we call rhetorical studies or rhetoric, when you're using words to influence people and have them change their actions. I don't want to drop that in there too much, but that's what my master's emphasis is in. So it's a master's in English. You guys are probably wondering, and but rhetorical studies. So initially, I thought, oh, that'll be great because I won't have to answer any questions because I'm always looking for like the easy way out. Like, oh, this like every class, I'm just gonna go, Professor, this is obviously rhetorical, and I just turn it, turn the quiz back in. But that's what that's all about is trying to influence, and that's ethos, pathos, logos, that sort of stuff. But
Look at you,
yeah, yeah,
throwing
I
all the.
mean, I did retain a few things.
Mhm.
I took a lot of years of school, and I know enough stuff to write down on one page. Um, but also, I was just going to say the follow up about the entertaining part is that some people envision that Robin Williams coming into a room and being all like crazy to a classroom and think, oh, they're just going to laugh and go on. No, and especially not modern students, they are not entertained by any of that. And the moment, and even when people say, oh, you must be the cool teacher, I said, if I allow myself to even consider that I might be not horrible, they will disown me in a second. Like you have to be as humble as you can possibly be as you're in front of the kids and the students. I call them students. I don't really call them kids, but
Well,
um,
that I have a question then for you on that.
yeah,
So I think when you go on stage as a comedian, you almost have to, in some ways, put yourself above the audience a little bit, ahead of the audience, and
you
it's
mean
not
because
that
I'm smarter and I have more degrees, or do you mean just in general?
just in general, like you are like not you specifically, but also you specifically, that when I think when comedians or when I do comedy on stage, I have to kind of I don't look down on the audience at all, but I have to be kind of a little bit above what the audience is and lead them in a kind of lead them in the room, lead them where we're headed with the stories and everything. And I find that when I get into an educational setting, that I actually have to come in and more I put myself in a space of like serving them versus like being I don't know. Does that make sense to you, or does that is that anything that you
It
think
makes sense
about?
what you're saying, but I don't think I agree.
I'll go.
So I would say there's a confidence level if we're going on stage to be a comedian that says, I'm in charge, I know what's going on. Not necessarily above them, but like I have a plan, and it's
Yeah.
not just like we're not just going to wing it.
Yeah.
So I am ahead of them in that respect. But the biggest thing you need to do as a comedian, not the biggest thing, but one of the big things you need to do is to let the audience understand that we are on the same level. Because if I'm above you, looking down and saying you guys are idiots, you guys are dumb, not saying it, but like meaning that, the audience pulls back pretty fast. Like, who does this guy think he is?
Yeah.
And in fact, it's usually the other way, which is to say, I'm so stupid. Here's some of the dumb things I do. And the audience laughs down at you. And part of their entertainment is, my life is terrible, but it's not as bad as the comedian's because his life is even worse.
Yeah.
So it's not.
Well, that
I
that
understand what
I
you're
absolutely
saying,
agree
but it's about being the confident that I'm in charge of what's going to happen for the next 20, 30, 40 minutes. They have to feel that you're in charge. And that
with.
usually comes in the first 30 seconds they decide. And this was something I don't know who said to me early on, but they said basically in the first 10 to 15 seconds, the audience decides if you're funny or not. And you will spend the rest of the show trying to convince them otherwise. So if you have a great joke out of the gate, you're set for most of the show and you can even mess up. But if your first joke bombs, now you've got work to do because now you have to convince them that you actually are funny. So that's part of that. For
Well,
teaching,
no,
my
I actually completely agree with that. And I guess the way I phrase that of kind of being above the audience isn't quite what I mean either. But there is a different level of confidence that I feel like I have to have in comedy that I then and have to exude of confidence in comedy than I do in teaching.
well, yes, I would think that has to do with asking questions. So the questions I'm asking the audience are, in fact, what a layman would call rhetorical. I would not call rhetorical, but they're meaning there's no. I don't need your answer. So if I say, "Have you guys ever gone to the movies?" Well, I was at the movie. Like, I don't really care if they have an answer. Like, yes, I've been there. But it's sort of just an introduction to something. But yeah, in teaching, there is the thing of trying to be a facilitator of knowledge, and I for sure see myself as a servant when I'm teaching. So that is at least that's my approach. Now we have two different things of what we're teaching. What you're teaching is people paid to see you in that regard. So I'm going into a classroom where students have been made to go there because legally they have to be there. So they're not excited to be there, and they haven't paid, and they're not invested in any way other than if they leave, they're going to get in trouble, and they may or may not care about that. So my approach to teaching is always um, almost groveling, to be honest, which is I'm going to do everything possible to like let you know I'm trying to help you. And at the end, after we've gotten through all this of me saying this is how much I care about you, this I'll do whatever you need me to do. How can I help you? What are the things you need? All that stuff. Then at the end of that, I may bring up, oh, by the way, I'd like you to read a book, and then they're like, ah, and then they're mad. But all the way up until that point, it's me just pretty much begging them to be my friend, even though we're not friends. But like that's the sort of level it feels like you're just really trying to be a servant to them. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I would. That's the part that I agree. I don't know how I would put it fully into words, but that there is a difference in posture, I think, between the two.
yeah. Um, so some of the things I do in the classroom, which I shared with someone recently, and they thought this was interesting, so I'm sharing it with you. But I think you know this. But some people's approach to teaching. So I teach high school, and for high schoolers, that's a whole. They've got all their opinions about stuff. And some people go into that. At least actually when I first started, is it a pretty rough school, and it almost was like the same way people said about prison, like you got to show them on day one that you're in charge. And so I tried this approach for the first couple of weeks of being like, really, don't let them mess with you. And people kept saying, "They go, don't let them push you around. Don't let them push you around." And I had a student. She said, I don't know, it was probably a month into it. She said, "Why are you a teacher?" And it was like in front of everybody, and I got all quiet. And I thought, and I was trying to think of why I was a teacher. And it's because I was like, well, my comedy career has not gone the way I thought. So I need some more money, and I really would like to have benefits. But that seemed like too complicated. So, but she basically said, "You always seem mad and that you're yelling at us." And it was like the biggest punch to the gut ever. And I thought, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that person. That's not who I am anyway, but also like I just didn't want to be that. So it changed immediately. I thought, okay, what would you like me to be like? What would be better? And I quickly learned it was about being positive, being happy to see them, and I genuinely was. I was just trying to be like tough guy for whatever, which wasn't working anyway. No one thinks me a tough guy. And then it was as I progressed, it was really about let me tear down all the barriers that are out there. So some teachers are big about you want to borrow a pencil, borrow a pen or something, and you got to give me something in return, and I'll get it back. No, whatever you need. So I have pencils, tons of pencils. I have color pencils. I have whatever you need. Every road trip I do, every time I go out to do a show, I grab the pens from the hotels. I have a big old box of pens, whatever you need. You need those. Um, I would ask students all the time, what do you need? What can I do for you? What is there? And sometimes it's food. They're hungry. Well, Lamar. All right, so I got like a closet full of food, and sometimes then it was sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're cold. So I got those little heaters that go you can move around that burn down the school, but if you turn them over. And then I got fans. I would have a couple of fans so that those students they could sit by theirs, where they had a fan. So those things would maybe go at the same time. People that had a heater, the guys are like, I'm not going to sit over there; it's too hot. And then I had this thought about, some of the kids, students walk in with Starbucks. Somebody can't afford it, but some get them, and I couldn't have. So then I set up a coffee station in my room, which I did every Fridays. So it's coffee and creamer and whatever, and I bought a bunch of mugs from. So it was like it was all servanthood in the sense like what is it you need? I will do all those things, and at the end of it, then I'm going to beg for you to do something for yourself, which is could you write a paragraph? Could you write 2 paragraphs? 3 is quite a bit, but let's try to get to 2 and do all that sort of stuff. But and then it changed, and it just changed, and it made. I think the students liked it more, but I loved it much more. I didn't have to be the bad guy. I mean, I had to say a few times. I mean, you still have to do that with some students. Say, "Look, you can't call me a mother effer in front of everybody. We're gonna have to tone that down. You can say it quietly, just not in front of everybody. Whatever. Those kinds of things." Anyway, that's how I teach, JJ.
It is. And I like it. I mean, I don't want to get mushy, but it's always been fun to watch you in that environment or hear the stories in particular about you in that environment
Yeah.
because it is really fun to watch you and how much you care about those students and how much you invest in them and how much you want them to win. And
Yeah.
you do, you kind of glazed over this a little bit, but you tended to teach in rougher neighborhoods and disadvantaged schools in particular. And
Yeah.
so you really did care about the students. And I do think that that's you have to in education. Like I do think in comedy, like I care about the audience. Like I want them to have a good time, but it is different in education is that you really want them to so I mentioned I deal a lot with kind of movie theory and stuff when I'm working with companies. I help companies literally almost write like a movie outline for their customer. And the big thing that drives the story forward, is the transformation of the hero, the transformation of the main character. There's always, if the character is the same at the beginning, the hero is the same at the beginning as they are at the end of the movie, it's not a good movie. And I really think when you're a teacher, for me, it always is about that. Who do I want them to become? And what is the transformational journey that I want to lead them through over this semester or this year? And I really have that aspirational goal for them. And I try to invest that in them through the classroom and through what I teach. And it always that's the through line for everything. Who do I want them to be at the end of this time together? And build the curriculum and build the story kind of that I'm teaching through the whole thing and really call that out of them through the whole thing so that they are somebody different by the time that they're done with my class.
Yep. Something you mentioned, which was tricky for me, which is what do I want them to become? And I know you weren't saying that like you were dictating it, but as a teacher, you learn there's things I would like for my students that they don't want for themselves. And that's a hard place to be in because you want to say, yeah, but I think you'd be better off doing this. And ultimately, they have to make those choices. I'm not their parent, so I can't force them to do anything. And sometimes I have influence, but sometimes it's just a suggestion. And sometimes they come back years later and say, yeah, maybe I should have tried something else or whatever. But it's tricky because you just have to say, well, let's figure out what you want to be. And I'm going to try to help you get to whatever that is. And hopefully it's something that will sustain you and pay your rent. And then we'll move on from that.
Yeah.
That's a conversation that's getting stranger and stranger each year as to what it is that will pay your rent. Because there's no way that I would have said 10 years ago, well, influencer is probably the best paying job you can get. And you should be working towards that. It's not something I even understood. So obviously not, because no one's heard of me.
I don't know, this podcast.
This isn't the first one. So if you're watching this and you've come to this, So let's talk about. We're not. I'm not going to keep you for the full 2.5 hours, but it's always good to get the expectations low, and then if you get out early, it's another fun thing. You can't tell the students that you're letting them out early because then the whole class are like, "It's taking so long."
Yeah.
But if you anyway, so a quick on our tours together and our time together. I'm not even going to talk about the April 1st dinner, which I would like to talk about. Well, maybe we'll do that for another time.
You can. You can.
Well, let's talk about our travels together. Anything that sticks out is like some interesting time when we were traveling. So while you're thinking about that, we did these improv shows, and they're primarily like at churches or camps and a few conferences. Very conservative groups, obviously. So we couldn't cuss or use innuendo or anything like that. So that was tricky for some people, not for me, but for some people.
One that was tricky. It had nothing to do with cussing, but do you remember when we did the Christmas show for that egg farm? It was the egg farm. They supplied like the north part of the United States McDonald's with eggs.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And we were in a hotel banquet room, and the audience was full of wonderful people. Like they were so kind.
Yeah.
So we had an amazing meal and everything. But they had also brought some family and children.
Yeah.
And also, a number of the people in the room did not speak English as their first language.
They did not.
And so we're up on the stage doing the comedy show, and like kids were like crawling up on the stage, like in the middle of us thing. Yep. And nobody was getting them. Nobody was getting them. Like we had to literally stop the middle of a sketch and take children off of the stage. Yeah. And then also there was an interpreter that kept yelling at other tables what we were actually saying.
No, I don't think an official interpreter, right? That
no.
Like had to start helping out.
Yeah, they just started because people were not getting the word jokes, which you were excellent at. But I was killing it as a fake ballerina or a fish riding a bicycle. I was getting all the laughs, but you were getting none because nobody could understand any of the jokes that you were saying.
And that's not too different than most shows, to be honest. But for that one, for sure. Yeah, I know. I heard afterwards they said it was one of the most unfunniest quinceañeras they'd ever been to. That's what I heard. That was the chatter in the lobby. Yeah, that was a tough one. That was a tough one. The one I know you like was sometimes for whatever reason, and this was before Uber, by the way. They would say, "Hey, does anybody want to give the guys a ride to the airport afterwards?" Which I always thought this is a very unprofessional way to pawn off giving us a ride to the airport the next morning. But I'll let you tell it how you think it went, and then I'll fill in what I think is.
I blocked out a lot of it, but I remember as we were going, the guy was talking about how he couldn't feel his feet. And
to start with, this is like a Tuesday or a Wednesday or something. So it's a weekday midday, and he's driving. It's like an hour to Detroit or something like that. So initially it was, "Hey, how great is this? You got the day off. You get to give us a ride." And he's like, "Oh, I'm on disability." Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So immediately it becomes awkward. Little awkward.
Disability. And then
he couldn't feel his feet, and we felt every brake, every gas, everything, because the car was just like slamming and going, and we were just sitting there going, "We're gonna die. We're gonna die in the middle of Iowa." Oh, I just remembered. Do you remember when we did this huge youth conference in the Round? First off, comedy, especially improv, in the Round, where everybody is half is behind us, and the power went out through the whole thing, and it was the middle of summer, and we were next to a pig slaughter farm, and all of the smells just kept wafting in, and people were getting sick in the middle of the show because they had to open all the doors because the electricity went out. So we're doing comedy in the Round with no microphones in front of about 1,000 teenagers. Half of them are behind us, and people are getting sick because in is wafting the smell from the pig slaughter that's happening right next door.
These all sound great. These sound like we are, again, if only
These are just the ones we can talk about. These are just the ones we can talk about.
Yeah. I had one where Yeah, sometimes I did weird stuff to get to the gigs and then get back, and then some of those. But yes, we had some moments where. Do you want to talk about your organ hat or not? And we'll leave that for another time. But you lost your organ hat in Florida,
Yes.
of course,
I
Florida.
mean,
We did a lot of shows in
yes,
Florida, which makes
did
complete
a lot of
sense.
shows in Florida, and
In
you
Michigan, Florida and
enjoyed.
Michigan is mostly where we did shows.
And when we were in Florida, you and our comedy partner used to like to talk about how we really wanted to go to Disney the next day, but we just
Yeah.
didn't have tickets. And then somehow we would magically get tickets. What, you guys? You guys are
Oh,
giving us
how do you know we
cuts.
went? That worked so well. I couldn't believe it. It was just like,
Gives us
hey, let's just bring it up a bunch of times during the show, and maybe someone will come up and give us passes. And then
yes.
that was the one. That's the same one where you had rented the convertible, right? Was that the same trip?
Yeah, we rented a convertible to
No, not
drive
we. No, no,
across the
not
border.
we. You.
You drove. You drove it. I
Well,
think. I
because
think we.
you got a convertible PT Cruiser and drove
Uh-huh.
across Florida in the pouring rain with the top down,
With the top
uh,
down.
crying,
I think we
essentially.
were screaming Rascal Flats at the top of our
Yeah,
lungs.
that was the road or whatever or the Broken Road was a big
Broken
song that
road.
summer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the problem was whatever was pop culture big was going to be mentioned almost every show. So,
Well,
like as
we
suggestions, that's the thing I
well,
learned the most. So I learned some things about improv. I had done a little bit the groundling, so I knew a little bit, knew enough to go. That's not my thing, but I can do off the top of my head. I just don't like the acting part of it, which is makes sense, I guess, if people know me. But what I learned more was that people pretty much come up with the same ideas, no matter where they are in the country. You hope they would come up with something unique and strange so we could use that, and in fact they often came up with the same things.
I know at one point we tracked that over 50 shows in a row, Chuck Norris
Yeah,
came up as a suggestion.
that was the summer of Chuck Norris, and that was like, yeah, we got it. But we
Yeah.
would do the questions thing, and there was still in almost every show there'd be someone say, why is the sky blue, why is the grass
Yeah.
green, where do babies come
And
from? I
every
knew only two of those three, but
where the good where the good acting came in is we'd sit there and we go, all right, so give me a weird outfit that people would wear, and somebody would yell out tutu every time, and we would go, oh,
this guy,
tutu, what? Oh,
yeah,
you guys, tutu, I'm gonna wear it. Okay, crazies.
which was really, really quite prescient by many of them. But I would say this is that that was yes, that's where the acting came in, which is to say, um, like, hey,
I
we're
like
looking
it
for like
leaning on.
crazy ideas. And go, hey, we said crazy ideas. We didn't know we were going to be like this. And it was like, oh, I wanted to punch myself in the face so many times during that time. I got in trouble quite a bit for putting my head down because I was embarrassed by what we were doing. So it was, the person in charge of the improv group was not pleased with my uh, my nonverbals were
We're
too
we're
telling
disclaimed. Yeah, which made me laugh every
every
time.
time.
The
It was
more
great.
uncomfortable you got, the happier I became.
So it was really, but what a rocket ship we were on.
There were some interesting things too about, like, I remember you had been on what was the TV show you were on? The
um, the show was on. It was called The Tonight Show. I was the host
last
for
no
years.
no
No,
last
oh, Last Comic Stand. Yes.
Last Comic Standing. You were on Last Comic Standing, and you didn't make it onto the show, but they used your clips in all of the
Yeah.
previews
So I was on
and in the
three
promos.
times for those who look at three different seasons I was on. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. But I remember one time we were doing a church event, and
Huh?
we were on stage, and at the end of the show they wanted to interview us, and so they brought us back on stage and they started talking. And I had been a youth pastor for a little bit before, volunteer youth pastor for a little bit, and you'd been on the TV show, and the guy kind of took some liberties with that.
A little bit.
And the
Yeah.
one thing he said was, he stood up on stage and said, Chris was kicked off Last Comic Standing because of his faith. And everybody like gave you a round of applause because you stood up for your faith. You were kicked off, not
Oh,
because you weren't funny, but because of your faith.
yeah. Yeah, that was the tough part because how do I correct him and go, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, 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 it's because I wasn't very good. But
I wasn't seasoned yet. But he literally said you got kicked off of television by the mainstream media because you
yeah,
because
yeah,
of your faith, and you basically got a standing ovation.
I
And
know.
then he was talking about me, and he kept talking about how I just kept loving on those teens. JJ was loving on the teens. He loves to love on the teens, and
Oh,
you could not stop laughing. So we're
that's
on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people. Your head is down. You have hands over your eyes, and you can't stop laughing because this guy just keeps talking about
uh,
how I was loving on
it's
teens.
a horrible term. It's a horrible term that's in church circles. And yes, so yes, it was too much for me. And also, if you recall, that was our first, I think that was our first official show as a group.
First big show, yeah.
And there were a lot of hot girls at that church. And so I thought, okay, not girls, I'm talking about adults. They were adults. Let's be clear about after the teen remark. They were,
Yeah.
I mean, some of them were pretty old, some were like 30, 31, but they were, still, they were old. Anyway, so I thought, oh, after I got this thing, maybe no, nothing happened afterwards.
Yep.
But
You
it's
and I
always
had
hard to hook up after a church show.
it is. And you and I had very different experiences about who we got set up with
Oh, are you
on.
going to share that story?
Don't know if I can. I don't, I don't know if I can. Um,
We can cut it out later. We can cut it out later.
okay. But that was when somebody was the other guy who was in our group was he'd
People
been
that knew
texting.
you very well. This is not
Yeah.
someone, by the way, let's be clear. This is someone who knew you very
Yes.
well and known
Knew
you
me
for
very, very
years.
well. Yeah. And was talking to a friend of his who wanted to meet me. And I was like, oh, what's she like? And he's kind of being very vague about the description and everything. And she's great. She volunteers with, like, she teaches kindergarten and she works with handicapped people. And she's just really fantastic. And she has an amazing heart. And I said, well, what does she look like? And he said, well, she's petite. And I said, okay. What, blonde hair? And I was like, okay. Da, da. And
The
so
word, the words "perfect for you," JJ, were said many
yes,
times.
yes,
Perfect
I
for
think
you.
she's
Oh,
perfect for you.
she's
Perfect
perfect
for
for you,
you.
JJ.
So I end up going. I
I was
can't.
go- I,
You
I
knew
arrived a day later, right? I came later.
yes, you came late to this, and
Yeah.
so I was there early. I think it was in Michigan, and so I'm going to lunch with this girl who I had been chatting with over text, and I meet her for lunch. I don't know if I okay. I
I'll do
meet
it
her for
because I have
lunch,
no problem doing it. But you're
and
you're you're a good person.
I walk in, and she's in a wheelchair, and her legs don't go past the end of the wheelchair. So she's like about 2.5 feet tall, and she's hooked up to oxygen tubes and can't even control her own wheelchair. And none of that was ever mentioned to me.
No, it didn't come up.
I would have just
It
like
didn't
a
even.
little tiny heads up.
Now, a couple of things there. Obviously, we are not making fun of her. We're only saying
No,
perfect for JJ. Actually, it does sound like she was perfect for you, but that's. But yes, it does seem like in the description and some of the discussion that may have come up somewhere.
that should have come up from a friend. She was actually very wonderful, very sweet, and
A wonderful person. That part is not in dispute. The other thing is,
no,
who knew at
we had a
that time that the issue you had with this person was not so much all that; it was that she was female.
that was part of
But we didn't know
that
that at
was
the time. At the time, we did not.
well, I did,
Oh,
but
you
you
knew.
didn't. That the main issue, actually, the perfect for me was that what that didn't fit was that she was a female.
Yeah. So I'm leading us into that because this is like I've tried to do this story on stage. You've witnessed me doing this story on stage, and it bombing like
Wait,
bombing so
again,
badly.
so
Yeah, to where I thought I may not be good at this job. I should probably quit. So let me tell you how I tell it, which is we were in this improv group and we knew each other at that point. We'd known each other probably about 10 years. It was, or yes, right about 10 years. And I was out in LA visiting for something during my spring break, and you were living out there at the time. And this is years after we'd been in the improv group and all that. And hey, he said, "Hey, do you have time this week to get together?" And I said, "The only night I really have open now is Tuesday, which was April 1st." And you're like, "Well, I guess that'll work." So we get together for dinner, and you come in, and we're talking chit chat, the usual stuff. I'm hilarious. People are laughing. Oh, well, it's just you and I. But and then you tell me. I don't know how do you say it? How do you say?
I came out of the closet.
You came out. Well, okay, you use
Yeah,
the
I came
euphemism.
out to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
you let me know that you were gay. Now I did not know. I honestly did not know and had not suspected it. I didn't even think about it. I guess I should have known after you didn't like the girl in the wheelchair that maybe that
Yeah. That should
maybe
have been
there's
clue
something up.
number one.
But I thought it was just about the hiking that you were like, well, so this is awful. This is a terrible thing to be talking about. But anyway, so you're telling me this, and I have this like, oh man, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about 10 years together. We traveled together. We shared a hotel room together. We bathed together. That was just because of the water issues, but it was like we spent so much time together, and I was thinking in my head, I hope I didn't say something or do something that would have been offensive. I know I've probably made jokes, and I was like, and then I realized, oh, you're still talking, you're still pouring out your heart, and I'm like shuffling through 10 years of memories to try to figure it out. And then I thought, I wonder what my face is doing while I'm trying to work this out in my head. And I kind of come back to the conversation, and you're in the middle of it. It's just been one of the most difficult moments. And I thought, oh yeah, I got you. But anyway, and then it was April 1st. So I'm thinking, oh, he's got me. I totally fell for it.
But then do you say, like, how do you balance
Yeah,
that?
like I didn't want to go. This is April Fool's, right? But I think you had said. I think I said something like, "This is April 1st. You're telling me this." He goes, and you said, "Yeah, I know, it's the worst date, but you was the one that chose the date." And so I thought, yeah, that is. How did he lead me into this to get me to do this? So it wasn't uncomfortable only in the sense that I genuinely, and what I called you later about it, which I
Yes.
said, did I react correctly?
Yes, you did. And again, part of our history is me really enjoying you being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so in the moment it wasn't I was the uncomfortable one, but later when you told me how uncomfortable you were, that just actually made it all the more me
And
all the more
my
happy.
uncomfortableness was genuinely because I care about you, and I thought, I hope I haven't said something horrible over
Yes.
the years that you're just going to go. So I'm telling you this, and what you said back in Tampa that one time or whatever, um,
Yeah.
and because I wasn't always, I wasn't always I would have maybe made a joke. I don't know. I
What?
still would do that, and I certainly do that to you now more.
Yes. More.
But I do check in. Now that's been 10. No, how many years? It's been 10 years.
Probably about 8 or 9 years, yeah.
Um, I think it's more than that. But anyway, I think it's 9. Yeah, I think it's at 9. But anyway, I think about every once in a while I check in with you. Go, is that an April Fool's? Because I don't want to be embarrassed that you got me. Like,
Yeah,
and
the
you've done
long
a
con.
lot of stuff over the last 9 years to like really make this joke happen. I mean, you're really going all out to make this. Like, and I know the moment I finally give in and go, I think I believe it. You're gonna go,
Gotcha.
gotcha, April Fools. But yeah, that was anyway. I'm glad we're
We've
still
covered a
friends after
lot
that.
of topics in this first episode that I feel like we're just getting it all out of the way. Like we've covered faith in this. We've covered,
Barely,
you
but
know,
yeah,
well, I mean, we've mentioned,
mentioned.
you know, dating teenagers.
Not
You
dating
know,
teenagers. Don't. That's gonna
no,
be.
no,
That's gonna look
that,
horrible on
yeah,
the
no, no,
transcript part. That's gonna look terrible.
yeah, um, homosexuality. We've got it. You're just
Yeah,
getting it all out of the way at the beginning, so that then anything after this is really
right. If
on the
someone's
table.
listened this far, and I'm guessing there's no one, but if they've listened this far and they think, I wonder if the next ones will be like that. I don't know either, but they will be entertaining. I hope, and I do want them to have real conversations because what's happening in education now. There's a common thing that people like to say that education or schools in America have not changed for the last 100 years, which may have been true up until like the mid 90s, maybe into 2000 a little bit, but in the last 20 years things have exploded, and every year it's exponentially different. So things that were happening even last year, and you think about even last semester, now with the proliferation of Chat GPT and all this other AI stuff that's happened even the last few months has changed the way people have to. So there's so many things that are different about education. So I want to talk about those things, but I also want to have my comedian friends on, so it's fun to talk about that. And many of them are experiencing this, some because of their own experiences, but some because of their kids, because I have old comedian friends who have kids, and that's funny. So, yeah. So anyway, that's what this show is gonna be. So this could be the only one. Maybe this is the only one. Um,
I feel like we found a strong direction.
yes,
I
we
feel
did.
like we found a through thread that I think can carry through
We don't
everything.
know what it is, but it's there, and
It's obvious. Everybody will catch it real quick.
yeah, they're gonna see it. And I'll put it in the when I lay it out. It'll be this umbrella term that you'll be able to go, oh, I got it. They had it from the beginning. They just didn't know it. But most of them will just be excited to get a picture of this mug. So that's what
I can't wait. I cannot. It's going to be framed on my wall.
you can take a picture of it and think, oh, I bet someone's drinking out of that right now. Like that's what you'll be able to think about it. Just imagine it. It'll be
I do
pretty
think
great.
you have to have it every time you do an interview. Every time you have to bring that cup up. That's
Yeah.
the through thread.
Here's where I made a mistake. I'm right-handed, so I'll have to drink left-handed. I'll go, oh, that's an interesting point you're making.
Because
And
you're a good
then
actor. You're a good
yeah,
actor.
just have that. All right, JJ, Dr. JJ Peterson, thank you for being first guest on what I hope is the one of many. It could be one of few. Could be one of one. Who even knows? This could just get buried somewhere in my hard drive and no one will ever see it. But I hope people watch it and like it, and hope people interact with us. But again, who knows? Who knows? But I appreciate you being on, buddy. I care about you. I'm gonna say I love you because you want to say it to me first, and I'm saying it to you first. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. I
Oh, wow,
knew that was going to shock you. I only did it for
man.
the camera. I only did it for the camera. When the camera's off, that will never be said again.
Hey, Chris, I love you too.
Thanks, JJ. Thanks for loving on me all these years. I appreciate it. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.